This is Fire Emblem Three Houses. It's one of the hardest games to Iron Man, but I managed to do it on all 4 routes without using Divine Pulse. Now I'm gonna show you how you can do the same, the strategies I used, and what proved the most effective to beat the game on Maddening Ironman. I'm gonna go through each important things in Fire Emblem Three Houses, gambits, classes, units, weapons, and so on. So now let's start with the gambits. The gambits that I won't mention here means they aren't that important to beating the game. Of course use them, it's always better than having no battalion. Have them as a filler and every unit should always have a battalion. Alright, let's talk about gambits. So gambits are very important in Three Houses because basically they either stop enemies or just help your own units a lot. Now the most important gambits which you get in this game are basically all the stride gambits that you get alongside. You basically get stride gambit after the Sylvain paralog, so make sure you do that on almost every route, so just recruit Sylvain, he's also a really good unit. And Blue Lions get it at chapter 8 as well, and everyone else get it at chapter 3, the first stride gambit. Now the other good gambits are also very good is Impregnable Wall, although you're most likely gonna get only one in the entire playthrough, which is at chapter 8, you can buy it. Impregnable Wall just basically protects your units for one turn, as well as if you have like Impregnable Wall on Assassin, you can basically, even if you're in the line of fire, nobody will go on an Assassin because they have Shade. So you can just protect your own units, they take 1 damage, they're not gonna die, so you can just finish your turn, put on Impregnable Wall, and then wait for an enemy turn. Since this game is not really an enemy turn game, most of the stuff you're gonna kill on player phase, so it's pretty strong gambits like Impregnable Wall and similar stuff like that. Also, really good gambit is also retribution, although you're most likely gonna get like one unit that can even use it realistically. That's not a combat unit because it's pretty useless to have it on combat units. On your main combat units at the very least, not. So you're gonna have to basically train one unit that's not good at combat but will get to A rank. Unless you're playing Blue Lions, because I think they get much lower rank battalion with retribution. So that one is much easier to use, but basically you're gonna need to raise your rank to A rank. Now retribution is mostly good only in a few instances. I don't think it's that important since this is not an enemy phase game. You can basically use it on your strongest combat unit and just send him in the line of fire if you really know that you're gonna struggle with other units and you know that you can basically survive with that single one unit, no problem. So you just put on retribution and put the unit in the line of fire to kill most enemy units, so you can basically use your other units for other stuff and so you're not overwhelmed. Now, also really good gambits, which are kind of combat gambits, but are very important, are Galatea Pegasus Company, which you get at Ingrid Paralog. This one is very important since it's the second best flying battalion gambit, third the best if you count Claude faction, basically Golden Deer. But this is basically the second best right after the Keyhole Wyvern Company, which is also very important gambit, even more important than this one. So make sure you get both. If you're using at least 2 flyers, just get both. Also, I recommend you use at least 2 flyers because they help you so much. You can basically, even if the unit is not strong in combat, you can basically use the reposition abilities with flying and Kanto, so you can just move in, move out. It's just very strong overall. Basically, you get Galatea in Ingrid Paralog, so make sure Dorothea and Ingrid are alive by then, and you have Ingrid recruited when you start the Paralog. Ingrid is actually pretty important to keep alive early game, since you don't want to kill her to lose on her Paralog, because you also get one of the best lance weapons in the game. If you compare it to Sylvain's Lance of Ruin, the Luin Lance, I think it's what it's called, is basically just better lance because of the hit rate. And hit rate is so important in Three Houses when you're playing on an Iron Man run without Divine Pulse. If you use Divine Pulse, then you can maybe say, yeah, it's debatable, but without Divine Pulse, that's definitely the case. Make sure you just recruit Ingrid and keep her alive at all costs up until you finish her paralog. After that, I don't think it matters much because Ingrid is just weak in combat. Maybe if you recruit her late, she can contribute something, but if you start with her or you recruit her early, she's just useless later on because of her low damage output. She's just basically worse Petra when you think about it, even though she is actually a royal where Petra isn't, but due to the stats, she's worse a bit. Also, she cannot get into Wyvern Lord, which kinda increases the damage output, which helps Petra overall. So yeah, those are basically the strongest gambits you can get in the game. Now you also get Dance of the Goddess, which is pretty much good, but you can only really realistically use it maybe in the last few chapters of Blue Lions. In every other basically faction, it's just almost impossible. None of the other routes you can actually get Dance of the Goddess that easily. You get it in the end of the game and you have to do very specific. In the next to last map, you have to basically before the battle with Edelgard, on every route you have to basically enter the opera house with Dorothea, I think, or Manuela, or something like that, and just way too much hassle. It's way out of your way. It makes the map harder, not easier. And you get it so late that it's usually you don't even need it. For 2 maps, you can survive without it. On Blue Lions, you can buy one, I think, so that makes it a bit easier. Also, it requires A rank battalion, and you wanna put it on a unit that's not fighting, or at least not your main combat unit, and it's not a flyer, so it's a bit difficult in that regard as well. So it's nice if you can use it, but not necessary. And then basically the most important gambit is basically blessing, I think. It just basically makes your unit survive one hit with 1 HP if it would kill you. In case you actually put the adjacent unit, the protection guy, you can basically not die as long as you enter combat with 2 HP or more. Because even if they crit you on the first attack, second attack, the adjutant blocks, so it doesn't matter at that point. But blessing is really important for those low percentage crits, and for example against Dimitri, who just kills every single one of your units unless you have that. And also it's nice against Edelgard and some bosses who have crit rate on you and stuff like that. You always use blessing on your best units and best combat units, and that should be really good gambit. You get one for free, chapter 14, I think. You just buy it, and I mean, it's not free, you have to pay gold, but in this game gold is not scarce and it's not that expensive. So you just buy that one and then you have it for the entire game and basically use it in every map. This is just a very important one. So I usually put it on my dancer because dancer is not doing anything else than dance, and first turn you may not need the dance, so you can just use blasting. And because of only one use of blasting battalion, you just dance until the end of the map because dancer does nothing else than dance. So yeah, it's quite nice to put it on dancer. Also, dancer should never see combat, so you're not really risking on losing that battalion on an Ironman run, which helps a lot. And the final battalion, which is kind of a combat battalion, but it's really good. You can only get it really on Blue Lions because you have to do the do paralog, but if you manage to do it, you get a lot of protection. That's Dusk or Heavy Soldiers. You basically put it on a unit that's already tanky, like maybe Sylvain if you put him into Paladin, or Ferdinand if you recruit him on Blue Lions, although I never do that because it's too much of a hassle. You would basically have to go out of your way to train heavy armor on Violet, which is just not really viable. You could do it with grinding and everything. Just you spend so much time for that little reward that it's not worth it. So yeah, but Dusker Heavy Soldiers have so much protection combined with Felix's shield. You just basically make the unit unable to die. If you put Aegis Shield on the unit, which is like 6 protection and 3 resilience, and then put Dusker Heavy Soldiers, which are like plus 10 or plus 8 defense, it's something crazy like that. Also, I think they require only B or C rank battalions, so they're pretty easy to use as well. So, I mean, they're not the hardest. So I think that's all with battalion that you need to know, basically just 2 of the best flying battalions, Blessing, Retribution. You only need maybe 1 at the end of the game. Especially it's good when you have Insane Dimitri or something similar. And then Blessing and Impregnable Wall are just probably more important things than some of your units actually. If you look at the Iron Man run, basically if you lose a unit with a battalion, you also lose a battalion. So if you have a weak unit with Impregnable Wall, for example, you might even want to sacrifice a little bit stronger unit just to keep that battalion. Depends on the situation and the position you're in, but like Impregnable Wall and Blessing are just 2 battalions that you want to protect. Stride is not actually that important because you get like 3 strides on Blue Lions and 2 on every other route very easily without any trouble. So you can afford to lose 1 stride. You're not gonna die. Don't lose all strides, but you need 1 stride alive, but if you lose 1, it's fine, most likely. So that's not that big of a deal, but early game it can be, since you don't have the second one yet, but once you get the second one, basically always look at the fact that you have 1 stride battalion alive, because you need it every map almost. But you don't need more than 1, realistically, so it's fine. It's nice to have 2, because it makes it a little bit more flexible, but not necessary to survival. So yeah, that's supposed to be... That's probably all I have to say about battalions here. Just use 2 flying battalions, 3 if you play Golden Deer. I think Golden Deer also has Impregnable Wall in flying battalions, so I recommend actually using 4 flyers in Golden Deer, at the very least. It's like 2 more than every other route. In every route you should use at least 2 flyers, but in Golden Deer you should use 4, probably. Because it's so easy to just get that flying battalions. On other route you're very limited with flying battalions, so it's a bit like maybe Sylvain shouldn't go into flyer. I would recommend actually to keep him as a paladin, just to raise his lance rank ASAP. And yeah, that should be it. You don't need to train his flying, that's just a waste of time. He's not even a good dodge tank, so you're not gonna gain much from flying from him. And if you put Dusker heavy soldiers on Blue Lion route on him, you can actually use him as a very good tank. With swift strikes, that's just amazing. So yeah, that's what I have to say about battalions. Now let's move on to other stuff.